So number 12, we're looking for an example of production system and complementarity. So remember that specially adapted sire lines and specially adapted dam lines. So looking at letter choice A, range adapted ewes bred to sires expected to contribute superior carcass characteristics. So we have these range adapted ewes and superior carcass characteristic sires. So that sounds like a pretty good production system complementarity example. But let's look at the other ones. Spanish bucks bred to Spanish stows. That's not production system and complementarity, as well as boars bred to boars. Angus bulls bred to Charolais cows. So we, I normally think of Charolais breed as a more sire, more of a sire. It contributes a lot of paternal characteristics. So D would not be the correct choice, and then E. We have our F1 Brahman Angus bulls mated to Limousin cows. It'd be a whole lot more beneficial if these F1 cows or F1 bulls were the cows. So E is not the correct answer choice. So once again, we have our range adapted ewes bred to sires expected to contribute superior carcass trait characteristics. So that would be a great example of production system complementarity. Moving on to number 13, an example of a locus where there's codominance of alleles. So let's start with letter E. Letter E, this is an example of dominance because the big T is dominant over the little t. Inhibition as well as gray. Those are examples of a form of dominance. So when we look at the dilution in cattle, big D, little d results in diluted color determined by the extension locus. The color, yes, is determined by the extension locus. But big D, little d, this right here, that's not an example of codominance. But spotting in cattle, we do see codominance between the big S, which is solid, and S superscript H, which when it's homozygous or with a little s, it's a full Hereford pattern. And when those two alleles are together, we get a bald-faced color pattern. So we have some codominance between them. There's not one allele that is dominant over the other. So answer choice A is the correct choice. It is not dilution because the big D is not dominant over the little d. There's intermediates. There's an intermediate color. So the correct answer is the S superscript S and S superscript H. Moving on to production system utilizing F1 Charolais Angus bulls bred to F1 Brahman Hereford cows. So we have all replacements purchased outside the ranch. So we're looking at all are true except, so we're looking for the incorrect answer. Replacement acquisition is an advantage of this system. That is incorrect. In fact, finding replacements for these F1 Brahman Hereford cows can be quite, not necessarily a challenge, but it is something extra that you have to do. So the correct answer choice in this case is A, but for looking at the other answer choices just to make sure that those are true, we have a good example of production system complementarity. Yes, maximum utilization of heterosis and progeny in dams. We have an F1 dam, and then we're going to have maximum heterosis in the offspring, so that's correct. Possible heterosis except by the bulls in the system, yes, because we have a crossbred sire, excuse me, and then we have an example of a terminal or specific cross. So when you cross these animals, you are not producing animals that look like either of the parent, which is why you have to buy replacements. So the incorrect answer is replacement acquisition, and this is an advantage of this system. Number 15, in the context of a single locus with two alleles and dominance is a genetic absent in sheep production, a ram suspected of being heterozygous has passed a progeny test. So that means he was bred to a whole bunch of ewes and he produced only phenotypically dominant animals. So he passed the progeny test. So letter choice A, the probability of him being homozygous dominant given a clean test is less than his initial probability. That is incorrect. We know when an animal passes a progeny test, his probability of being homozygous dominant increases. Probability of being a heterozygote after a test should be less than before the test. So he's obviously not homozygous recessive. So he can only be homozygous dominant or a heterozygote. So if he passes a progeny test, we know that his probability of being homozygous dominant increases, meaning that his probability of being a heterozygote has to decrease. So B is correct. Let's go ahead and go on and look to make sure that there is no other correct answer choice. So letter choice C, probability of being homozygous dominant after the test should be less than that before of the test. This is the same exact what's being said in letter choice A, but written out in words. So C is not the correct answer because we know if they pass a progeny test, his probability of being homozygous dominant increases. Probability of the test should be less than being a homozygous after the test. Probability of the test has nothing to do, has everything to do with what he's being bred to, and not his probability of being a homozygous dominant. And then level of confidence may decrease after the ram passes the test. That's definitely not correct. Level of confidence is based upon the animals in which he's bred to, so it's not going to increase or decrease after the test. It's just the level of confidence. So the correct answer choice here is probability of being a heterozygous dominant after the test should be less than that before the test, because his probability of being homozygous dominant will increase, meaning that his probability of being a heterozygous must decrease. So, next question, selection against a recessive non-lethal allele, single locus with two alleles and dominance as its genetic action, and livestock population would include. So we're selecting against a recessive, so if we have big A and little a, we're trying to get rid of this little a, so to say. So not permitting homozygous recessive individuals to be parents. That is correct, because if you allow, say, red cattle to reproduce, that little a, or in this case, since we've learned cattle color, that little e will continue to be passed on. Not permitting heterozygous individuals to be parents. That's also correct, because if we use the black example as well, if you allow a black cow to be bred and it is a heterozygote, it still has one of these little e's and still can pass it on. And then not permitting homozygous dominant individuals to be parents, that would be the complete opposite effect than trying to select against the recessive lethal. So C is not correct. So A and B are, so the correct answer is A and B.